Don't make the black kids angry.
Yeah. Out in San Jose, the worst chief of police in America has just added 3 new requirements to the curriculum of the people who are studying and training to be police officers. They must now be trained in denial, deceit, and delusion, as we learn in this recent news story.
Jose's future police officers are getting a crash course in the past. This is a first-of-its-kind class, one the police chief says was born out of necessity.
They teach us a lot in the academy. What they don't teach us in the academy is, you know, the negative things that American law enforcement has been responsible for. We need to own up to that.
And so, in partnership with San Jose State University, the chief devised a history class. They cover local topics like the 1933 lynching in St. James Park and the batons and brutality at 1969's Fiesta de la Rosas. They also cover officer-involved shootings from Ferguson to Fruitvale Station.
A lot of times when you see these shootings take place, really that's just the final straw in a situation that has been years in the making.
The idea to give new recruits context before sending them out in the community. Bethany Torres says the class has been invaluable.
At first it can be difficult to talk about or to listen to how others might perceive that or the reason that others might have acted the way that they did. But in the end, it widens the picture.
The class is taught on San Jose State's campus by Professor Greg Woods. He also brings in guest lecturers to give community perspectives. He says he'd love to see other police departments follow suit.
This class helps us to save lives because it helps us to increase understanding and awareness of those very obstacles that have led to friction and a lack of trust.
Torres says she's taken the lessons to heart and will now use them on the streets.
Learning the facts behind it, it gives me more information to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
There are about 46 recruits this spring. They'll have their last class at San Jose State this Friday.
Well, Chief, isn't that special? I just have to think you left a lot out of your training. I mean, did you train your cops about how every day they are going to be subject to really intense black on white, black on cop racial hostility directed at them? Did you tell them when they pull up on a group of black people or you stop a black person for breaking the law, a traffic law, a robbery law, another kind of law? It's a long list, Chief. Did you tell them that when they pull up on people, sometimes they'll hear the song from Public Enemy? You ever heard that song, Chief? Fuck the police. Did you tell them that black on cop violence, black on white hostility is now a central organizing feature of what some you call black culture? Did you tell them that, Chief? Do you think they might need that to get by day to day in San Jose? Admittedly, the black population of San Jose is only about 3-4%. It's been that way for years. But what about the jail, Chief? What's the black population among the people you arrest? What about the failures to appear? 30% of the population of San Jose is Asian. Are you going to tell me, Chief, that Asian people, 10 times more Asian people in San Jose, do Asian people, even though there's a whole lot more of them, who commits more crime in San Jose, black people or Asian people? Did you instruct your new recruits in that, Chief? Or are you just going to let them go out on the street cold with only 3 things to arm them: denial, deceit, and delusion? What about Bart? You mentioned Bart, a Bart incident in your training. Oscar Grant, story of Fruitvale Station, the black guy killed on a Bart train. Did you mention to them that at Bart we don't release videotapes because it might embarrass black people? Yeah, let's run this clip I did on that a little while ago to remind people that on the BART train, they won't release videos because they don't want to embarrass black people.
Now, as you go about riding BART and speaking with BART riders who want to tell you their concerns, what are they saying about safety on BART these days?
I think people are genuinely concerned. They are fearful about the stories that have come out about the recent attacks, the assaults, the thefts. They're concerned.
Yeah, we've got the April 22nd assault. That was the 40 to 60 teenagers. We've got the June 28th, 4 teenagers. And then June 30th, 10 to 13, yes. Teenagers, all iPhone, cell phone robberies. And
I've received a number of requests and comments from writers to ask me to press for the release of the video of these incidents. And the reason for that is they want to see for themselves what's going on the trains, and they want to learn from that. And the next answer was that to release these videos would create a high level of racially insensitive commentary toward the district, and in addition, it would create a racial bias in the riders against minorities on the trains.
So they were saying that, and I assume the implication is that these crimes, or at least some of them, have been conducted by minorities, and so they don't want to release the footage because then that would somehow cause
a racial bias.
A racial bias?
Right.
Did they say, so if it were a video showing white teenagers robbing someone, we would have the video by now? Is that the implication?
Much to her credit, this board member released a back and forth email and memo she had with this woman who's the head of PR and one of the VPs of the BART system. Furthermore, disproportionate elevations of crimes on transit interfaces with local media in such a way to unfairly affect and characterize riders of color, leading to sweeping generalizations in media reports and a high level of racially insensitive comment directed toward the district through our social media channels, email, and call centers. So the board member, Deborah Allen, says to Carrie Hamill, could you explain what this part of your memo means? Quote, furthermore, disproportionate elevation of crimes on transit interfaces with local media unfairly affect and characterizes riders of color. I don't understand. The social media reaction to the original Coliseum incident in April, that's where the 60 black people rampaged through the train, was startling in the level of racial profiling that it prompted. The general manager got a call about the incident on her voicemail that used racist and incendiary language that made my mouth drop. This chick lives in Oakland, by the way. She was a candidate for city council in Oakland. Anyway, back to her memo. Many posts use patently offensive language that often involves racial slurs, parentheses. No news articles ever referenced the race of the offenders, yet some members of the public leapt to their own conclusions, on parentheses. Some telephone calls and posts even involved vague threats. The media has proven its tendency to highlight material in the most inflammatory way possible. As a former journalist, I can cite for you a number of bias studies that have pointed out media bias and the damaging consequences of it. The firestorm of criticism in the wake of the Oscar Grant killing centered around a belief that BART police were racially biased. If we were to regularly feed the news media videos of crimes on our system that involve minority suspects, particularly when they are minors, we would certainly face questions as to why we were sensationalizing relatively minor crimes and perpetuating false stereotypes in the process, because people are motivated by fear. People can be fully informed about crimes that occur on our system without being shown images that will inflame some members of the public and paint the transit agency in a poor and ultimately misleading light. And did you happen to mention about all the violence that takes place at coffee shops and computer stores in and around San Jose? How that's a black thing? How this 82-year-old woman who lives in San Jose went to nearby Los Gatos to look at an Apple store. She got in the way of some of the fellas who were involved in a whole tsunami of black violence and robbery against Apple stores and coffee shops where they take computers and iPhones. Did you mention that, Chief? How that's a black thing, too?
Julie, this robbery happened at this store last week. 9 days later, she's still suffering from a broken pelvis and intense therapy and isn't expected to be out of rehab until next month. 4 staples in her head, 2 fractures in her pelvic area, and scrapes on her ankle, shoulder, and back. Injuries this 82-year-old grandmother suffered after a visit to the Apple store a week ago Monday.
I'm lucky that I didn't have a concussion and loss of memory.
Shirley, who asked we not share her last name, says just before 11 in the morning, she went to the Apple store in downtown Los Gatos to look at a new app. When she saw the greeter, she knew something wasn't right.
He looked like fear, and I looked in the room, and it literally exploded with fear. People screaming, the customers, and running around.
No security guards around. She first thought it was a terrorist attack. She immediately ran to the door. That's when she says the suspects catapulted her out of the store.
The impact was so great that they probably just made me airlifted and down, and my head was bleeding really bad.
Lying on the curb, she thought she was paralyzed. Police say 4 male robbers stole a variety of merchandise, last seen driving off in a black Dodge Charger. Los Gatos police aren't releasing surveillance images of the suspects, saying the investigation is ongoing, and they're working with other law enforcement to see if the suspects are involved in other crimes in the Bay Area.
Everybody's shocked when we heard about it.
And did you mention it's not just San Jose area? Did you mention all over the country the fellas just are not that into white people? Often they use their Wakanda mind meld, their Wakanda powers of mental telepathy to realize that white people really aren't into black people. They realize that white people hate black people. That's what they think they have. And this guy in Cordova near Memphis, he saw a white dude driving down the street and boom, using his Wakanda powers of mental telepathy, he realized right away that the way the white guy looked at him, told him that that white guy, like all white people, hated black people, hated him in particular. The guy turned his car around, hunted the white guy down, and killed him.
A Cordova family is picking up the pieces after their loved one, Scott Hervey, was killed in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Family confirmed that 61-year-old Hervey lost his life in a shooting around 2:30 Wednesday morning near River Pine Drive and Linian Cove. According to his obituary, Hervey leaves behind a wife, 2 children, and a grandchild. Hervey loved sports and at one point was a scratch golfer. 24-year-old Bryant Ward was arrested Friday in Olive Branch in connection with Hervey's death. Through an attorney, the Hervey family released a statement saying, "As you might imagine, our family is devastated. We will never get our loved one back, but we do take some solace in the fact that the killer should spend the rest of his life behind bars." The details surrounding the shooting and Ward's arrest have not been released by the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Investigators are awaiting extradition of Ward from DeSoto County. We looked up Ward's criminal history and found he had previous arrests for assault and domestic violence.
Did you mention that how that happens, Chief? Did you mention how often black on white murder happens? You just didn't think that was important?
Please, sir. I want some more.
What?
Please, sir. I want some more.
That it's so wildly out of proportion? You didn't think that was important because on your force, in your city, with your mayor and your city council, even more important than protecting the cops, protecting your citizens, is not making the black kids angry?